So I watched it again and I watched it again. And then I saw that Vinegar release had made a full-on treatment of this movie, and I loved it. So I just watched it and just thought this was a fantastic film that I think that more people should be involved in watching.
You know, Chris Kelly, this is how he eats sandwiches. He puts two pieces of bread together and he sandwiches the bread with meat and lettuce and all that stuff.
I take the sandwich, I punch it, and then I hand it to another guy.
You do weird things. You like things backwards, Chris Kelly.
First I put on the lettuce, and then I put the mustard on the ground. And
then you drop the lettuce on the ground?
And then I wipe it up. I throw that away. Take it out of the trash compactor.
Chris Kelly, you got a system.
It's really impractical, but I mean, it does wonders for my weight loss.
Would you? Yeah, it takes you an hour to make a sandwich. Would you have liked to work on this film? Like, so would this have been a picture you'd like to work on? Because let's say from a PA standpoint.
Well, from a PA standpoint, this was a non-union film. Yeah. So there was a lot more hands-on. I enjoyed more hands-on films. So yeah, I would have enjoyed working on this movie. It's interesting that you bring up being a PA on this. Actually, the PA that was on this movie, who was also a double for Jimmy, because whenever you see Jimmy is turned from behind to do the over-the-shoulder onto Margaret, that's obviously, we all know from working in the business that would be a photo double. So the person who was Jimmy's photo double was a man named Jeff Most. He was also a PA on this. And then later on, he became a producer, and he produced movies such as The Crow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right? And then he did The Specialist, and he did all the sequels to The Crow and the TV shows. And he's still currently working right now. And he has nothing but fond memories of this movie. He talked about it on the documentary Revisiting Liquid Sky.
How about this? Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I just want you to kind of fill me in more about your interview with Anne and more about the extras on this film. How's that sound?
Sounds awesome.
Hey, I would have been like, I hate it. Right. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks. And Chris, we didn't talk about this, but Adrian's a necrophiliac too.
Yeah, she's definitely a woman who enjoys sexual encounters.
When Owen dies and gets a crystal or pulled out of his head, then she sits on his head. It's an awkward scene.
It's strange, to say the least.
This is one of these movies where if you have on and someone who isn't into these movies comes in and sits down with you and like, hey, what are you watching? There's going to be some explaining to do.
I felt that a lot whenever I watched this movie, that if somebody walked in, that they would say, hey, what are you watching here? But, I like it, so I wouldn't have any issues explaining it.
Got it. And now, I do think if you're kind of on the fence about this movie, even after this podcast, I recommend going to IMDb, and they have about 73 pictures. And just scroll through the pictures, and you'll get a look of the neon lighting, the vibe, the colors, the hair, the style of it. So
it's very much like how Nicholas Ren does his movies now.
Yeah, and I mean, he's a fan of this film. He's a big fan of this movie, and you can tell by his use of, I'm not going to say like neon, but his use of colors. I mean, I think Only God Forgives, we did an episode about that, has some of the best usages of red. Just very, washed out kind of like ominous lighting, and this has this as well. So yeah, I mean, this definitely, I could see how this, and I mean, Lady Gaga's been really influenced by this film as well. She loves it. She goes on the record saying that. But I could see I mean, this is the kind of movie though that it's one of those films where you get like, I don't know if you remember this, but back like in 2001, when the Boondock Saints VHS or DVD was floating around everywhere. So you couldn't really get access to it, but you had a buddy who had it. So I kind of like that this film probably was on bootleg VHS tapes, and then it went on bootleg DVD tapes, and then you could buy it at like a Comic-Con or a vendor. So I think it probably has a very impassioned audience. What are they going to think when all right, Chris, you've been watching Liquid Sky on a twice taped over VHS tape of Liquid Sky, and then you get the 4K Vinegar Syndrome. What's going to happen to you? Are you going to, like, what's your first thought when you see the 4K and the color compared to the VHS tape? Is it a movie meant for 4K? Is it a movie meant for kind of VHS tapes? Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. I think that, I don't know, maybe that it would be too much to put it in 4K. I feel like films that were not shot digitally or in 4K should be released in 4K. It's much like whenever The Thin Man was released on Blu-ray. It's like that movie was not shot digitally. If you do a digital transfer, it doesn't look the same. It doesn't feel the same. if that makes sense. I feel this movie, the version that I saw was the DVD version, but it was still like intensified as opposed to how it would have been normally seen shot on film, which is not a bad thing per se. It's just things pop out that maybe shouldn't have been popped out, or maybe the director didn't want to stand out that do stand out. It's certain things like that I have that would bother me, specifically the spaceship. When you see the spaceship coming in, it's a little off looking. I love the scenes whenever we're seeing the alien's perspective and all you're seeing is kind of like a predator vision. I think that's dynamite. I love the way that looked.
Oh, for sure. And you know what's kind of neat though about Vinegar Syndrome? They allowed Yuri and Slava to be there for the transfer of this.
Oh wow, yeah. So then they approved all of it.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting, right? They didn't want to do that for years because they didn't have a good transfer. So they just kept it on reels that were falling apart. And then they were finally able to work with Vinegar Syndrome on this. And I was reading around. The release of this came, Black Friday last year. And that's when I bought Tammy and the T-Rex instead of this. But I'm very happy. I love Tammy and T-Rex.
I still have to see it.
Yeah, and then we have the episode out now, too. So make sure to listen to that, everybody. So, or don't listen to it. Or do. You know? If you, like, wherever you're at in life, you know, either don't or do, you know, if you don't like people who are on the fence, listen to it. If you don't like being told what to do, don't listen to it.
It's a definite maybe.
Yeah, definitely maybe kind of, you know, if you got the time, if you got a few minutes, put it on here. If you're going for a walk, you know, put it on. But I don't want to tell you what to do. I think however you want to listen to the Movies, Films, and Flicks podcast, you should listen to it however you want. But I'm not telling you to do that. I want you to kind of, but if I tell you to do it, you're not going to do it. So here's what's going to happen. Just, if you're ever out and about and you think about it, maybe just do what you want. But I'm not telling you to do what you want, because then you will do what you don't want. And if you don't want to, then just listen to it.
If you want an AirPod or Bluetooth speaker, or if you have stereo surround sound, either way, I believe that it should be eventually heard somehow. If you like it.
I mean, we're on iHeartRadio. We are on Spotify, which you can get through your smart TVs. We are phone, desktop. I mean, we're anywhere. Sometimes I just scream out the podcast in places. It doesn't work like that, but I do it.
No one really listens to me. I got arrested twice, but, you know, I do it.
But the cop said I told a great story about Big Trouble in Little China in the cop car. So it was really good. Yeah,
they agreed with me. Yeah. So it kind of worked, or it didn't.
I got a new subscriber. All right, so when you're kind of going, so I kind of listened to Slava and how they made this, and one thing that I found was pretty interesting is his wife, who also produced this. Let me get the name here real quick.
Nina.
Yeah, Nina. There it is.
Nina Karov.
Oh yeah, Nina V. Right?
Nina Karov. Yeah.
Yeah, Karov. I got it right in my notes. I missed it. But they said that one time the fire marshal and some police walked into one of their scenes in the apartment, and there's just a ton of people standing around. And Nina just goes, "I got it." And she took the guy outside, and then they just filmed their scenes, and it was all over.
Yeah.
I like that as far as a producer. That's what you have to be on indie films.
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, this film was shot very, very much like that. It was shot in Anne's actual apartment. So a lot of the scenes take place in the place that she was actually living at the time. She said it was cold in the wintertime and hot in the summertime. So there wasn't, central air and everything wasn't really quite a thing yet. And it wasn't really the most pleasant experience. But she said that there was a lot of times that, people would come and go. You have to work around that. But it's good with the fire marshal. It's like, oh, yeah. You just have them pull them to the side, shoot the scene really quick. And then it's like, okay, cool. We're sorry. We won't do it again.
Hey, look that way. Action.
She said that Anne told me that one time whenever they were shooting, because some of the scenes take place at night. What was really interesting was some of the scenes that they shoot outside were shot during magic hour, which is the reason why that they look so beautiful. But they could only shoot for so long because this movie was, she said she thinks that it was shot, she's pretty sure it was about a 3-month shoot, but it was definitely, she said it started out, they were cold, and then it ended when they were hot, or maybe it's reversed. I can't remember, but it was definitely a long time. They shot this
stretching $500,000 out to 3 months.
That's nuts, isn't it?
Right.
It's really good, but I mean, adjusted for inflation, that would be
1.5. Something like that.
That's around $1.5 million, but that's still not a lot of money as far as shooting a film goes.
Yeah, but it's like you hear about Insidious. That was what 2010. That had a $1 million budget. and throw in some inflation, it's like 1.2, but they shot that in like 14 days. So
that's insane.
I mean, I guess it
that
works.
movie's so good too.
Yeah, I love that picture, and I like the low budget aesthetic of it. But 3 months, but I guess since you have such a small, intimate crew, you can kind of
and you also have
balance
to
that.
You also have to know that a lot of these people that were here, they were here because they were friends, and they were here, working with each other and from different industries, and they were all working together. And also, this movie was, you could tell it was used to showcase the modeling and the hair and makeup. It's extravagant, so you use this movie as a platform. And it was fairly successful when it came out. It grossed 1.7 million at the time, which was adjusted for inflation was 4.5 million. So that's a pretty successful film for $500,000 for 1.7 million.
That's a lot of midnight screenings, right?
From what I read, it showed for 23 weeks for midnight screenings, but Anne said that it was probably a little bit longer than that. But it was one of the more successful midnight screening films of all time.
I mean, it's easy to see how this would have that audience.
Of course, yeah, because it has a certain niche market. And of course, you hit that market, and then not everybody's going to want to see it. Well, people from that market are going to want to see it. You're going to want to dress up, and you're going to want to go spend money on going to see the movie. And it's a beautiful experience as opposed to just going to see a movie. You're experiencing a live action theater almost.
It's interesting with this film. I mean, man, I can't $500,000. I guess it's a decent sized budget, right? For
what it is, yeah. I mean, you got to know where to put the money, which Slava did. He put it into visual effects and special effects, which. That's what you would need in a movie like this, and also the hair and makeup.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess keep the care because it's not. This movie only takes place over one day. It's a night. No, so it's one day, night, and then a day, and then it's over. Correct? This is not. So the course of this movie is essentially somewhere around 24 to 36 hours.
I would say that it's probably more like 48 hours. But
because remember in the club on the first day, they're like, we have the photo shoot on Adrian's roof tomorrow. And that's when the movie ends.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right then. Yeah, it's about 24 to 36 hours.
Chris Kelly.
No. This is just like that argument we had. What was it like a while ago? And it was it was 5 million. I'm like, yeah, it's more like 6. And you're like, what the?
It was 255 million. And you're like, yeah, it's closer to 256. Chris Kelly. Chris Kelly.
Oh, goodness.
Chris Kelly. But I mean, you do, but the interest, it's only in the course of the day, but she does go through about 3-4 outfit changes, I guess, throughout the day, because you have the night that, when she's out, and then the morning when she goes out with Adrian, and then when she goes out and meets with Owen, and then her next outfit later on. So, I mean, it's a lot of, I guess it's not too many costume changes for her. And I guess
several. It's definitely something that you need to keep track of, but it's not as, I guess it wouldn't be as difficult if you think about it, but if you stretched it out over a period of 3 months, it's like, woo.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
That's pretty rough.
How long do you think it took for them to film the Johan and Sylvia scenes? So Sylvia is Jimmy's mother, and Johan was spying on the aliens from the World Trade Center, but shuts down at night, so he has to go to her apartment with his, telescope. Telescope?
Yeah, telescope.
Yeah. To spy on them. And then they proceed to just have a dinner, and she tries to woo Johan. And then Johan gets stabbed.
Yeah.
Poor Johan. But he did not handle that situation, Chris Kelly. He runs up to her, grabs her arm. She's already unhinged. Johan kind of dropped the ball.
Yeah, I'd say that he decided to go over there at the wrong time. I don't know if he would be able to tell, but clearly she was high. And she was, the character of Margaret was definitely on a mission to not have anyone interfere with her getting in to this spaceship.
And she does.
She does. According to Slava on the commentary for the DVD, he said he left it open-ended. He said, well, she goes onto the spaceship, or does she? Who knows? I like to think that she may have, but it's all open-ended. So he's like, I want the viewer to come up with their own ideas for the ending.
Wow.
And he talked about a possibility of a Liquid Sky too, and it's in the air. It sounds like everybody is on board with making Liquid Sky too, but Slava said that his idea for a sequel would be Anne's journey coming back to the planet Earth and what happened to her after she went to the spaceship. If that's what he said that he would do, if that's the direction that seems more plausible. I don't know. I think that would be fairly interesting. I don't know if a Liquid Sky 2 would really, you know what I mean? Like, would it really work?
Well, this movie is so of its time and influenced